Remarks, call the meeting to order, and then we'll go into that. All right. So good morning, everybody. I'll call to order the regular meeting of Coachella Valley Water District Board of Directors here on September 14th, 2021. I'd like to make clear for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided for under the governor's executive orders in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. Today's meeting is presented in a hybrid format, both in person at CVWD's Steve Robbins Administration Building via Zoom. Governor's executive orders N25-20 and 29-20. There's a lot more than there were at the last meeting. N33-20, 35-20, 60-20, and 821. Remember that for the next time because I'm not going to say them again. Suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act, and district board members and staff may choose to participate in person or by video conference. This meeting is being live streamed on the district's website and YouTube channel. Members of the public may also join the meeting via Zoom. Zoom details are listed on the agenda. Members of the public who wish to comment on any item on the agenda or within the jurisdiction of the district will have 3 minutes. Public comment may be provided in person or via Zoom or by emailing the clerk of the board in advance of the meeting. Such comments will become part of the board meeting record. And we will have remote participants, board members today, right? So we'll make sure to call on them explicitly as items come up, and we will do everything by roll call vote. And so let's see here. Let me really look at this. Why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And roll call, please.
Okay, good morning, President Powell.
Here.
Vice President Estrada.
Here.
It throws me off with empty chairs. Director Bianco.
Here.
Thank you. Director Aguilar.
We need him.
Director Aguilar.
Star 6.
You'll need to unmute yourself.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I heard you.
Okay, and then I believe Director Nelson will arrive late, and we'll note his arrival time.
Very well. So I don't know that we have any further additions, deletions, or adjustments to the agenda. I know we had some changes prior to final publication, but
Yes, sir. We did want to, I think, move the Oasis item to the front.
it's already
It
on the
is.
front.
Okay, got it.
Item 5, I would like to note, President Powell, if you recall, we will take an item on the action calendar. I believe it is 9C
See?
after closed session, so the board will adjourn
Okay.
into closed session
Right.
and then convene back, and then we will take item C.
9C. Right. All right, we'll do that. All right, with that noted, do we have any members of the public wishing to comment at this time? Okay. Hearing none, we will at this time address item 5A, which is a meeting of the Oasis Board. So we will ask Directors Bianco and Nelson to drop off the line?
Director Nelson is not online, but Director Bianco is, and then I will put him in a holding room so that he's not participating
Okay.
in the meeting.
All right, let me know when you have that completed.
Okay, and he is on hold.
Okay, so good. Then we have Directors Estrada, Aguilar, and Powell here for this item 5A. It looks like David Wilson is presenting. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so the purpose of this item is to authorize the general manager to execute change order number 3 with Suka Construction LLC in the amount of $107,709 to procure and install 40 stop logs for the control structure at reservoir number 1 within the Oasis recharge project phase 1, or phase 2 rather. The Oasis Reservoir 1 is separated into 2 basins, a 20 acre foot westerly basin and a 40 acre foot easterly basin. They're separated by a control structure Utilizing the stop logs allows us to modulate the hydraulics of the system and to segregate one basin from another to allow us to maintain it. Change order number 3, the contract right now with Sucit actually has already been reduced by the first 2 change orders. Right now, the current contract with Sucit is the awarded contract was $46,088,353.70. The current contract is $45,760,320.76. As such, there will be no adverse impact to the budget, and this draw will come from the approved contingency.
Thank you. So stop log, is it a like a plug or something?
It is, it's a stack. They're 5 by, I think they're 5 by about a foot, 5 by 12, so 5 foot long by about 12 feet thick. And you stack them 5 in a row. We have 5 bays, I believe. And that allows you to adjust the reservoir depth on each side of the control structure.
Yeah, I should have looked one up. I was going to do that, see a picture of something, whatever it was. Okay, fair enough. Do we have any questions for David before we go to action?
No.
Thank you. Okay. Then I guess we can go and call for the vote. Do we have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
This is Director Aguilar. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. I'll take him as a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Aguilar, second by Estrada. And then roll call vote, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
and Director Aguilar.
Aye.
Thank you. 3-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And that was the only item, so we can bring back, I think Director Nelson was talking to Jim, actually. I'm not sure what's going on. Good. Morning, Anthony.
That was Director Nelson wanted to FaceTime. So I had to get up and he's coming in. I thought he was going to come in this way.
Oh, there he is. Wow. Say it and it shall be so. There he is. Good morning, Peter. It's like magic. How did you do that? One moment he's on the phone and the next moment he's standing there. Poof. Can we do that with Director Aguilar too? All right. So we just got finished with the Oasis Board, and so that gets us to item 6, and I believe we have all 5 directors, 3 of them in person and 2 over the phone. So the consent calendar. I'm just thinking, can we pull? There might be a few others, but Director O'Dowd or former Director O'Dowd, it's item R. I know it says, and I like the way the resolution is written, that it was a roll call vote with hopefully 5 ayes. If we leave it on the consent calendar, I feel like that's not really going to be the case because it's buried in it.
And
Right? So can we pull it just so we can
it
vote
was,
on it?
yeah, I apologize. It was the last minute. It was on action and we were trying to reduce the action
Yeah.
calendar a bit
Let's
and we
pull-
moved it over.
Let's pull it off. I'd like to pull that one off just to be sort of the spirit of the action there.
So with that, I'd move the balance of the consent calendar.
92nd. I just wanted our general manager to, if he could refresh my memory in his comments about the, I know that we've moved things around over the years regarding agreements for non-potable, maybe other agreements. And I see a lot of them here this time. I'm just kind of wondering how if there's any type of agreements that make it into action, or are we in the same boat where we were just trying to reduce action items?
This is an annual update to an existing agreement. And so the terms are pretty consistent moving forward. I think what we've tried to do in most cases is when it's a new agreement to put it on action, or whether it's a controversial agreement because it's outside ID1 and there are other things that we have to pay attention to. But I don't know that we're consistent in that approach. These, I think, and I'm looking at Olivia, these are all just renewals, is that correct? And I'm getting a vertical head nod for those of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've been doing it this way.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, there's been one or two specifically that have moved to action because of specific circumstances involved in the agreement. We have to do more with policy than anything else.
These
Go ahead.
are the type C agreements that are just being on the consent calendar, so they're going to a different rate, and they're already existing customers. We would bring all new customers to the board to bring their attention to it, but these are existing customers. And in fact, this agreement was a 10-year agreement with Shadow Hills, and it doesn't expire until November. So we did a first amendment for this type C rate for them.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to get a sense of what made it where, because I know that there was a want from us to at least try to get whatever was already existing through. And if that's the case, I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page.
After this one, there are only, I believe, 3 golf courses that remain to go on the type C rate. And then everybody would be on the 5-year auto renewal. So we shouldn't have to bring them to board like we have in the past, except for new customers.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Good job of not discussing the actual item. Jeff's freaking out over there.
No,
All right, so-
that's fine unless you take the vote. Until you take the vote.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the balance of the consent calendar, which is everything but 6R. Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0.
Good, and then 6R, I mean, it's not controversial or anything, I didn't want to make it like that, but all the best to former Director O'Dowd, and I move approval of the resolution as it's written.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay. And we're going to see if we get 5 votes.
Dun, dun, dun,
Put it to the
dun.
test. All right, let's do the roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson. Oh,
Aye.
thank you.
Oh, so that did pass as 5-0.
And just for the board's, I guess, information, we will be voting at our next meeting on the Region 9 Aqua Board ballot. I would recommend that we vote with the ballot as recommended by the nominating committee, which puts Patrick as a vice chair, Harvey Ryan from Elsinore Valley as chair, and then there are 5 board members. I'll send you the ballot so that you can look at this ahead of time. But it's actually got an IID member, Director Norma Galindo, as one of the recommended board members. The others, I think, have been on before. Carol Lee Gonzalez Brady, who is Brian Brady's spouse, James Morales, who is from East Valley Water District. So there's a number of folks that have already participated in that leadership role. So I have no concerns at this
And
point.
since we're on that topic, the nominating committee's meeting on Friday for the slate of president and vice president and so forth. Could you push that out to us once you know
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
what they do on Friday?
Will do. I'll have to lean on some of my better connected staff members, but yes.
Appreciate that.
Bet somebody can handle that.
I think we have a connection with our former Director of Communications and Conservation.
There you go.
True. All right, so on to informational reports. 8A is written communications received. I think there were
There's 2, and
yeah,
the revised list was distributed to the board at the dais.
right, thank you. So that's oh, it's actually here because it's not on the, online,
Correct.
is
They
it?
came in after the posting of the agenda, or they were finalized.
All right, so something about the surf park in La Quina, and I appreciate the response to that too. And then non-essential water use, yeah.
And I guess
Yeah.
while you've mentioned the surf park in La Quinta, John McMillan, the city manager at La Quinta, asked if we might be available to go brief his city council, and I just haven't set a date yet for when we might be able to go discuss the water supply assessment process and how we see that particular project fitting in with water demands, water supply. It's not, again, it's not a project for this board to approve. We are not the land use agency. It is a La Quinta approval process. We just review the water supply assessment based on what our staff's projection of overall valley demands and supply are. And we've done that and found no objections. So, but he would like us to go over, and I'll inform the board when that occurs in case you want to sit in the audience or participate
Yeah.
directly.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Good, yeah.
And so we have an update, Robert, on the strategic plan fiscal year 2021 year-end review.
Yes, sir. Good morning, President Powell, members of the board. Let's see, I know we have a full agenda, so I can keep this really brief.
Yep.
This is just a typical update that we provide at the end of the year to give a status update on the accomplishments for the strategic planning for fiscal year 21, which ended on June 30th of this year. So, you all have seen these before. This particular strategic plan was adopted back in 2020, and it covers all the 10 effective utility management areas. So kind of moving on to the progress, there were 19 initiatives that were identified, and out of that, 12 got the green light, 5 received the yellow, which is substantially completed, and then only 1 is deemed incomplete. There was 1 that was voluntarily withdrawn, and we'll kind of talk about that very briefly. So out of the 19, 17 were deemed substantially complete for a total score of 89%. Kind of moving on to the specific areas, strategic goal 1, which is customer service and stakeholder engagement. We focus on disadvantaged communities outreach and made good progress in terms of going out and educating stakeholders on that. Number 6, which is financial viability, also had 1 initiative, and that was developing the request for a proposal for the enterprise resource planning and utility billing. I believe that staff said that they're going to come back later this year or maybe in the fall with a proposal to the board. I know this has been heard before, so there's a little bit more work that needs to be done on it. The second area was water quality environmental leadership. This is the one that had 1 of the projects in the middle that was voluntarily withdrawn, and that dealt with the PFAS attenuation. The 2 other ones, the climate change action plan, as well as the energy optimization program, these are substantially completed, and I think it's really good timing because I say the climate action plan will allow us to fulfill some of the requirements for the grants that we're seeking. Third area is water supply optimization. This is a big one. One of these you'll be hearing later today, which is the one in the middle, evaluate and design mid-canal storage, so I won't belabor that one. The one that hasn't been, was deemed incomplete is the feasibility study for the Whitewater the Whitewater replenishment facility, and that's really due to the lack of funds and also other pressing needs. So we're not quite sure when that one's going to be resurrected. But the other more important ones, I would say, or more timely, Oasis Phase 2, there's good progress being made on that, and then Ag Drain monitoring program, which is very important for the purposes of doing a net water balance on the system. So making good progress on those 2. Infrastructure investment and management, you can see there's 4 objectives or initiatives in this particular goal area. And all these have to do with the reliability of our system for the wells and the generators, et cetera. Happy to report that we made really good progress on this, and I think finance and engineering were successful at getting some grants, especially on the emergency generator part. So happy to report on that. And the last area is operational optimization. So this is a broad suite of different programs that covers everything from the computerized maintenance management program, which is a massive multi-year effort to better categorize our assets. Making good progress on that. We also, with the board's approval, enrolled in the Partnership for Safe Water program on distribution system. But we also did not neglect the human element, I think, of our business. And those are kind of highlighted at the bottom too. The HRDP, or Human Resources Development Program, which is a suite of training programs HR is undertaking, and the class and comp study, which is a 2-year program. I think we're right in the middle of it. So again, making good progress on those issues. To summarize, the rate of completion for 21 is 89%. We had 83% for the last strategic planning effort that we did back in FY19. We skipped 20. I would like to note that the dates on the bottom here for the FY23 planning dates are outdated as of today. We had every intention of resurrecting this process with the board's approval, but unfortunately, I think with the current state of affairs with COVID and uncertainty surrounding in-person meetings, we decided to shelve this until we get a little bit more certainty on the status of, when we're able to kind of conduct these meetings in person in a safe manner. So with that, I'll conclude and see if the board has any questions.
Yeah, before the board may ask, I thought I would just jump in and maybe elaborate a little further on the cancellation. I do personally see a lot of value in conducting these strategic plans with staff input. It's easy, I think, for me to sit down with a couple of selected folks and come up with what I think ought to be done. And that's not the purpose, from my perspective, of why we do a strategic plan that involves 50 folks from various levels of the organization. But talking to a few folks, they weren't completely comfortable in getting in a room full of 50 people. Some, even though they were already vaccinated, were interested in wearing masks. And so I could tell they might be somewhat distracted from the purpose of the whole evolution and process. I thought about, only having people that were vaccinated, and I didn't think that was appropriate either. I thought about doing it only with department heads. Again, I do value the input from, the various levels of the staff. So recognizing that we are still struggling with how we're going to approach the vaccine mandate, I just thought maybe we ought to take a break with the new variant of interest, Mu, coming out, which is supposed to be perhaps less contagious, less deadly, but more vaccine resistant. I just thought we could pause again. I think staff's got, stuff they can work on. And certainly I'm open to suggestions from anybody else as to what to put on their to-do list. But I think for all practical purposes and staff safety of the workforce, we'll just go ahead and pause for one more year and reevaluate next year.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Took them off my calendar. And then we have an update on the developer fee cost of service study. Carrie Oliphant, good morning.
Good morning. So as you know, engineering's working on updating the developer fees. And in July, we presented a conceptual water demand offset fee and talked about replacing the supplemental water supply charge with this fee. So today, I was going to go into the details behind the fee. And can I change it? Yeah, okay. So we just have a real brief agenda just to show how the water demand offset fee was calculated and then how it compares to the supplemental water supply charge. So again, these are the 3 different fees that we're looking at, and today we're talking about replacing the supplemental water supply charge with this proposed water demand offset fee. And just a quick reminder, the supplemental water supply charge, the purpose of those fees are to mitigate the impacts of new development by replenishing the groundwater basin with imported water. But since the fee is based on cost to import water, we're limited in how we can use these fees. The water demand offset fee is proposed to accomplish the same goal as the supplemental water supply charge, which will make potable water available for future use. But the nice thing about it is we've developed the unit costs based on non-potable water construction costs. So the funds that we collect from this fee can be used for those types of projects. And we believe that this, the water demand offset fee provides a variety of benefits. It relieves pressure on the sanitation fund. It encourages dual plumbing systems and the use of non-potable water. It achieves the goal of groundwater basin sustainability. And it appears to be a little easier to implement. The new customers pay the fee based on their potable water demand instead of their gross acreage of their development. So again, this is just a brief graphic on how we would apply the water demand offset fee. So in the top example there, we have a proposed housing development, and all of their water demands are going to be 100% potable. So we would apply the full water demand offset fee. We'd multiply their demand by the unit cost, and that would be the fee they paid. In the example underneath, or the bottom one there, this is a proposed dual plumbing development. So they're planning to use potable indoor and non-potable outdoor. So what we would do is just apply a partial water demand offset fee. We would only multiply their potable water demand by the unit cost. So in that situation, they would have a reduced fee. So, moving on, we identify, or so the offset fee is currently based on a list of non-potable water projects and also conservation projects. So we listened to your suggestion last time was why couldn't we include conservation related projects? So we did put a line item in there for conservation. So we identified a list of about 23 non-potable water projects that are proposed to be constructed over the next 15 years. These projects amount to approximately 21,000 acre feet and a total value close to 84 million, and they're all currently in our CIP, our long-term CIP. And then we also included the conservation-related project, 950 acre feet with a total value of 1.7 million. And this was based on a previous project that was actually grant funded, and that was the amount of water that was offset or left in the groundwater basin, and that was the amount of the rebates that we provided. So we included that again. And then again, just the charges only applied to potable water demands. So the results of the calculations produced a water demand offset fee of $3,828 per acre foot. So just, I know that it's always helpful to see how does the new proposed fee relate to what we were currently charging. So I put this table together, and it shows the existing supplemental water supply charge and the proposed offset fee for 13 development types. So the supplemental water supply charge is based on acreage. So we have a unit cost that we multiply by the number of acres, whereas the water demand offset fee is based on the water demand. So we multiply that by an equivalent, the amount of water that's used by equivalent dwelling unit, which is 0.72 acre feet, and then we multiply that by the number of EDUs. So as you can see, some of the fees increased, some decreased, some stayed the same. For example, like the residential development at the top there, it stayed relatively the same.
Carrie, that top one, is it based on full potable or is that a dual system?
That's full potable.
Okay, so that fee could be lower
It could be, yes.
if,
they
I mean,
do.
it could be a lot lower.
Yes. If they do a
Because
dual.
if, let's say, 2/3 of it is on the other system,
Right, which is kind of represented the golf course development, that was, that's, that's an example of that. I mean, we're multiplying a unit cost by their gross acreage, where a majority of that acreage is a golf course, right? And so, under the proposed offset fee, they're only gonna be paying the demand for the 193 EDUs, so that's significantly decreased. And then if they decided to use non-potable water for outdoor at each of the units, it would be reduced even further.
So then how does that outdoor non-potable system get paid for?
Within the development, if, that would be the developer's responsibility, but this is, the fee that we collect would be applied to the off-site pipelines that we're currently installing in our CIP to get the potable water or non-potable water to these developments.
So in order to reduce the fee then by non-potable, they have to spend additional resources to plumb for the dual system.
Right, which they're currently doing, but they're not getting a break on the supplemental water supply charge. And then what we're also proposing, I'm proposing in 2 weeks to bring you an update on the water system backup facility charge, is that there will be a reduction in that fee if they're using a dual plumbing system. So there will be some benefit, some additional benefits and reduction in fees.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that works together, the backup system facility charges.
So, and then some of the items that did increase were like the apartments and condos and the hotels and motels. I mean, I think that makes some sense because they tend to be more vertical construction and they tend to be, on smaller acreage, but still have a significant demand. Some of the other ones that stayed the same were like the retail shopping centers, the supermarkets. The supermarket, we used a Walmart Supercenter store as the example there. The gas station without the car wash went down. Obviously, the gas station with the car wash went up. Self-storage facility went down, which makes sense. That tends to have a lot of acreage, but not a lot of demand. So, I don't know, overall, to me, it seemed to make sense to base this fee on the potable water demands rather than the gross acreage.
What's driving the mobile home park doubling?
Well, they tend to be condensed, it's smaller units on, but a lot of units on a smaller footprint. But as you can see, there's 398 EDUs in this specific example.
on
We
only
use-
60 acres.
Yeah, only on 60 acres. So they still have a high demand. And that was the Mountain View Estates project in Thermal that we used for that example.
So that's the one that kind of is throwing me off because, I look at the biggest swing here, and on one side you got the biggest swing on golf courses, and on the other side you got the biggest swing on mobile home parks, and it just kind of leads me to this thinking that, we make such a big investment that creates this benefit for golf courses. Now all of a sudden they have the ability to, take on non-potable water that reduces their potable demand, and so now they get to benefit from this type of structure.
Well, this is for new golf courses, right?
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
Sure, this
I
is
don't
all,
know.
this is all for new
Yeah, I mean, the
everything.
existing ones aren't going to benefit from this, but
It's not
The
gonna
whole-
not to cut you off, but there haven't been a golf course built in probably 8 years.
Right.
And I don't think there's any in the planning stage.
So
There's one.
Is there one?
it just, it kind of bothers me. I don't know how else to say it, but, you know, the other thing, the other thoughts that I have is that when you look at the valley and you look at, in my mind, the potential for growth and the potential for new development, it is all going to go into one side of the valley. And yet all the projects that we're kind of baking into this formula, you know, I guess maybe, you know, we can make the argument that, well, we haven't really put a plan together, or we don't really have a need over there, or come up with some other reason. But
Well, we do have plans, you know.
So
we have-
what-
we're in
so what
preliminary-
projects-
Preliminary plans.
are there
to-
projects baked in here?
To do recycled water at Warp 4.
Is that baked into this?
No, this is not yet, no.
So-
But the other thing is with the mobile home parks, when we consolidate them and we use grant funding, we get these fees paid for by the grant.
So we get them paid for by the grant, but there is you know, what I see is there's a cap to the cost per connection. And if all of a sudden now we're increasing the cost per connection, you know, we're gonna get into issues where maybe the grant's not gonna cover them. And so I feel like there's a lot of momentum being pushed for in the east side of the valley for affordable housing, a lot of which is dense development. It's dense. And to me, it just seems that this type of structure really creates a burden for them, more so than whatever other structure we were using before. And so, you know, I don't know. It just, to me, it just seems that, it seems too off, you know, the swing. I don't know how we resolve it. I don't know if we get into the conversation of, do we use I think there was an option that on the PowerPoint that said maybe we can use some of the backup
Yeah,
facilities charge to offset some of that.
I can go to the next slide. You can talk about it there.
Sure, but you know, I just, from a first glance, it kind of bothered me.
So the previous table was development types, and when we looked at the line item, the residential development, that was for like a large development of many homes. And so we wanted to just point out a single-family dwelling comparison. So if it was just one house coming in for a new meter, the proposed demand offset fee would be the $2,779 based on the average day demand. And with the current supplemental water supply charge, it's based on acreage, and the acreage charge is $12,218. So it depends on the size of the lot. So that's why I provided those various examples to try to get an
Right,
apple-to-apple
and on the prior
comparison.
page, you actually had smaller lots than 6,500 because if you divide out the EDUs, it came to about $1,578 per unit.
On the mobile home.
On the old fee, yeah, on the mobile home parks, right? So that's even more dense than what you had
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
on the next slide.
if you just used 3,200 square foot for a mobile home park,
Yeah,
it would be, that 1.1 million
yeah.
would be $300 a unit if it was.
We have a standard, so for mobile home parks, we charge $10,472 per acre. So with the supplemental water supply charge, we had a table that we created. And so for those 13 development types on this previous slide,
Yeah.
we had a standard
Right,
factor that we used that was based
Right.
on 2012 numbers, you know, based on consumption, based on the number of mobile home parks that we looked at that time. And it was all of their water usage divided by their gross acreage, and then it was averaged.
yeah.
And so,
So the higher density is going to be you're gonna end up paying more than the,
They are,
Under
but
the new
they're
scenario.
paying for the demand that they're using. I mean, you know.
It's
and they're-
potable demand.
They're
right?
paying for their potable demand. If for some reason the mobile home parks had a private well and they wanted to use that private well for outdoor irrigation, they would get a break. That fee would be reduced, or at some point if they wanted to use canal water. Again, dual plumbing or something to that effect. They want to use their existing system and make it private and then just connect to us for indoor potable, that would reduce the fee. But, I mean, the fee is effectively paying to leave groundwater in the basin for future use, which benefits the whole valley.
except when you get out of the fee by pumping water out of the basin, you kind of defeat that.
Well, with a private
Primary.
well, but then they're probably part of the replenishment assessment program.
Right.
And paying for their water through that program. Anyway, so just to conclude here, and then I'm happy to take any other comments and questions. Included in the calculation for the water demand offset fee, we did include debt service for the first 5 years of the Clean Water SRF loan that we have. And we also include a small amount of inflation, 2%. So there are options. We're happy to discuss further options. We can revise our list. We did talk in the past that we can use some of the current supplemental water supply charge reserves to like buy down the water demand offset fee. Or we can leave that supplemental water supply charge reserve and use it for a specific project. We could use half of it, leave the other half there in case we ever have imported water that we think we want to purchase. So there's a lot of options, and we're open to any comments or suggestions.
Yeah, I think if you could develop kind of some thinking about how this fund interacts with the sanitation fund and how it relieves some of those costs over there. If you could kind of detail that, I think a little more, so we could have a better understanding of how that interplay is going to work.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, basically, any fee that any funds we bring in through this fee will help reduce the amount of money that sanitation has to spend on these projects.
For recycled projects.
For recycled water projects.
To dispose of the effluent water, right?
To
Right.
any of these non-potable water projects that we're doing right now. For example, the ones that we're doing to connect these four golf courses along Hoveley. You know, the next 8 or 9 that we have an application for with the state right now, that we're hoping we'll have a funding agreement sometime this summer. We could, you know, those are part of the list. So any of those that are in the sanitation CIP right now, we could use these funds to help offset those costs.
And admittedly, the sanitation, I guess, projects are a priority because of concerns from a regulator permit standpoint.
Correct.
But there are opportunities to use just straight canal water, and these projects might also help reduce the cost of using non-potable canal water. So there's a benefit to both funds, sanitation and canal.
Is that true?
We could use this
I thought-
fund to reduce the cost of connecting to canal.
Okay, I missed that. I thought it was just connecting to the
We haven't included.
recycled water.
Yeah, we haven't included any projects in.
Because
in-
they're much further out.
Because they're further out, but we are anticipating every 5 years this would be updated. So as we go through the list of recycled water projects and the canal connections are a little further out, when we update this fee, then we could include those projects.
So was this fee designed, I know you have a number, $3,828
Yeah.
an acre foot. Was that designed to cover all of the next 5 years, or is sanitation, I mean, how much is sanitation, this was the same question that Peter, how much is sanitation going to be responsible for? I mean, they still have this legitimate need to dispose of this.
They do, and it's not going to cover all of the costs because we included projects out for 15 years. And we don't know, it's hard to control the development and who's, how much of this fee is going to come in a year, as it's directly related to new meters.
Exactly.
But you're baking in the 84 million.
Yes,
And then, so that 84 million, what does that represent? Does that
It
represent all
represents-
of sanitation CIP?
23 projects from the sanitation CIP. Some in 5-year and some beyond the 5-year.
And then, I guess for me is what's the driver behind this? Is it, what's driving the restructuring of the old supplemental water supply charge formula, where I think we were baking in all the, basically, I think all the cost of the projects, that maybe it was like sites or all the,
No, we didn't include sites. The supplemental water supply charge currently is based on calcs to import water, to pay for the entitlement. And so we have over 20 million in reserves, and we can only use that money to purchase entitlement. And so.
We haven't bought entitlement since I've been here,
Right.
with the exception of the Rosedale Rio Bravo, which was already underway.
And so the idea was that we're kind of copying or replicating a study that Sandy Guito prepared, where they looked at non-potable water type projects and they developed this offset fee.
okay.
And so we thought, well, this is a great opportunity for us to pay for some of our recycled water projects and still achieve the same goal that the supplemental is achieving, relieving water in the basin for future use rather than
The other
putting water in the
objective that we
basin.
had, Costello, was that we were seeing developments like mobile home park or someone's office out in the East Valley that was having to pay the supplemental water imported charge when they already had received water for the last 50 years. And it didn't make sense to me anyway, and I think to a lot of others, it didn't make sense that they were having to go out and buy water when they've already been using water. They've been using canal water, they've been using the groundwater, paying for imported water through the rack. And so it just didn't make sense to have a fee to force them to buy more
Yeah.
water.
No, I agree with that. I know that I made that an issue. It was an issue for me as well. But it was my understanding that that's been our practice.
Well, yeah, I mean, my understanding is this doesn't necessarily relieve that.
It doesn't.
I mean, it might if you have a dual plumbing system where you don't have to worry about using potable water outdoors, but let's say you.
Giving any credit for existing.
No,
wells.
let's say that you have a 40-acre farm that's been using 5 acre-feet a year for 50 years, canal water, right? And you build a housing tract on there, you're still going to have to pay this fee for any potable water demand.
Because of the development is to develop either the conservation programs or the recycling water to get to your property.
I mean,
It's still gonna.
I get it. And I'm with Director Estrada. I think it's hard to predict, but it seems like a lot of the revenue is going to come from the East Valley and a lot of the spending is going to come on the West Valley because we have all these non-potable projects on the West Valley for the existing Gulf to preserve the aquifer. But the growth, I'm just guessing, I don't know the numbers, but it seems like you're going to have a lot of growth. I don't know if it's 50% or whatever of it is going to be in the East Valley. So, I mean, are there projects on the East Valley? I think it's a fair question. Warp 7 or, I mean, you talk
Yeah,
about
Warp 7's included.
you talk about Warp
7's
4, but that seems like a long ways off.
It's a little ways off. Warp 7's a lot closer. Warp 7 is included in this 84 million. Yeah, and there's Warp 7 connection projects included.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is an initiative to try and get more affordable housing in the East Valley. I mean, I've been involved in those discussions. But the development that's taking place, the meter installs that are being put in the ground now are in the West Valley. They're not in the East
Are
Valley.
they? I mean, we're not getting yeah, I mean,
Look at Pulte Homes out there by the Agua Caliente Rancho Mirage Casino. Look at the development across from Annenberg. I mean, look at Mike Kiner's got his thing going up right across.
I mean, part of it, because
tennis
we're
court.
not counting the ones in cities of Indio and Coachella, so that's right. I mean, that's not included in this.
The other one thought that I was having was, what we did with the state water project tax. And I think that was an effort to try to mitigate or offset certain pressure on the West Rack. So we did what we did with that. And we found out how to move some of those expenses for non-potable projects into the sanitation fund. And now we're coming up with this other construct that seems to be offsetting that from the sanitation fund now into this other mechanism. And I'm just having a really hard time understanding why are we jumping all over the place?
Well, I think we're
I just-
trying to be creative and innovative in how we look at the cost and the fund requirements for new projects, and recognizing that the board has a problem with increasing rates. We're about to start on the sanitation cost of service study, and I think there's a lot of concern on the boards on those rates going up. And so here we're trying to find a way to help reduce some of the tension. We still have to dispose of the treated effluent from the sanitation processes. And this is the best way to do that.
I
So
agree with all that, and I let's be creative, and so now, we try to maneuver around, and I know it's not gonna be perfect, and we're not gonna get to a situation where we're gonna agree that, you moved the lever over here, but now you've moved it over there. And so, I think and maybe this is I don't know if this was the second time, or we're still talking about it, but, what I'm saying is, let's continue to be creative. I think there's an issue with what this is gonna do to some of the mobile home parks out there, or some of those developments up there. And so I don't know if we get into a conversation about, do we start looking at the water that you're offsetting when you go from one type of development to another, maybe from 40 acres of agriculture to 40 acres of homes, and now you've created some positive water. Do we give folks credit for that?
I don't believe that any of the housing developments that are being considered in the East Valley displace agricultural use. They're basically brown dirt lots.
Could be.
Yeah, I will,
The ones that I've been made aware of are not agricultural.
I will say this, is that I hear what you're saying, and I think that's a good discussion to keep moving forward. Just the other point to that is, I think, the existing residents have always thought that, development should pay for development, right? So that current rates and so forth shouldn't subsidize someone's new development. So I agree with the concept that, fees for backup system facility charges and fees associated with this, and I think we still need to walk through a bunch of this, but development would pay for development.
So Carrie,
Yeah.
With this sanitation cost of service study coming up, can we keep in mind that this fee may not be $3,828? And I'd like to at least see us, when we do that study, to have this fee half of what you're proposing, just to get a sense of what impact that has on the sanitation fund,
So
right?
you'd like it to
That
be
interplay,
half
yeah.
of
Yeah.
38?
38, so it'd be like 1,900, right?
Okay. So I did do okay, yeah,
So let's go back to that number, the 3,800.
Okay.
Is that just what we use today in the backup into the imported water supply? Where'd we get the 3,800?
the 3,800 is the 84 million. It divided by the 21, well, roughly, the 84 million divided by the 21,000 acre feet, including a little bit of debt service repayment and a little bit of inflation,
Okay, so the 84 million comes from the projects.
right? The project list
Okay.
divided by the acre footage associated with those projects.
Right. So I'm hearing, I asked the question, John said it in a different way, but that interplay between the sanitation fund, if we pull this down to 1,900, how does that affect the sanitation fund and their obligation to dispose of effluent that is regulated?
Okay.
So,
What's that cost?
yeah.
Right, but I want to see how much.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a fair, just put that into the assignment for that study. I'll come up with it.
Okay, we will do that. So, let me just move to this slide really quick. So, next board meeting, I was planning to bring the water system backup facility charge. And then in October, we were going to talk about the sanitation capacity charge. We were hoping to try to have this all these fee studies complete by December. But if we want to, I don't.
We wait on the cost of service.
Yeah,
study.
now we may have to delay a little on this, on finalizing this, if we want to see how it interplays with the sanitation cost of service study.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not ready to finalize it right now.
Okay.
For sure. I don't know how anyone else is.
Okay,
It
that's
seems a little high to me, is my point.
Okay. All right, good.
You know, we haven't heard from Directors Bianco or Aguilar either, right? Please speak up.
Thank you. This is, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I just had one basic question, and just one comment. I do agree with Vice President Estrada about the mobile home park fee impact, and there may be other ways to address that, and I look forward to further discussions about that. But Carrie, on that sample project list, where you have listed residential and then you have a separate category for condominiums, so does the fact that a residential, which I'm assuming is like a single family home, freestanding home versus condominium, is there any consideration given in use, consumption of use of water in developing that fee, or is it strictly based on this other formula?
So just to clarify, are you talking about under the current supplemental water supply charge or under the proposed offset fee?
The proposed.
So the proposed offset fee is just based on their water usage, their potable water demands. So what we did is we just looked at, this is an example based on the Washington Street apartments, just to be fully transparent. They had 6.8 acres and they have 73 EDUs. So we just took the 73 EDUs and we came up with their total water demand of 53 acre feet and multiplied it by the 3,828 to get the proposed offset fee.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you want to ask if DVBA has?
Right. Yeah. If anyone, did Director Bianco want to weigh in before we go to public comment?
Say one more thing.
Okay.
No, I agree with all of you guys' comments, and I think the water demand offset fee needs some work and some additional study by all of us.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll say one more thing that I almost forgot to mention, but when we come back, I'd like to get a sense if in the last, whenever we did cost of service studies or whenever we looked at these capacity charges and the way we assign EDUs for different categories, specifically if at one point we looked at mobile home parks and those units has either half a EDU or 0.75 of an EDU, or if they've always been considered one EDU. I'd like to see an example of a residential development and hopefully get a sense of what their potable use is. Try to maybe find like something that matches like acre per acre, like if it's 40 acres, 10 acres, whatever. And then I really want to take a look at that if in fact, there's, if there's so many units per acre, if the EDUs match. Because I have a feeling that maybe the EDUs, maybe it takes 2 of these mobile home units to equal 1 EDU. Maybe it doesn't.
Well,
I'd like to get a sense of that.
We did look at water usage, so we recently finished that 2-year study, and that's where we're coming up with the 0.72, which converts to 0.45 gallons per minute for an average day demand, okay? And so that is the number we're using based on this 2-year study that we completed. And we did look at Mountain View Estates, Bobby McKelsian's property out there in Thermal, and what their water usage was, to see if it was reasonable to say 1 mobile home park is 1 EDU. And it was similar, if not the same.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to see it. I know that we've done that in the past when we play around with these water budgets and we say, well, here's one that's this big and has this much water budget. But I just like to see if, if there's any potential for a mobile home unit being considered as maybe 0.8 EDUs or 0.75 EDUs.
Okay. Yeah,
I think you get what I'm saying.
I think there's plenty of standards from AWWA that have to do with how EDUs are calculated for different uses, but.
Yeah, we have
Good question.
But there is a difference between the mobile home park that Bobby Mulcazian put together. It's been a while since I've been out there, but there is some large green space out there, as I recall.
Are they using potable for that?
I don't think they have a choice out there. Well, I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure. They had a private well at one point. They were going to use that private well for their landscape outdoor irrigation, but I don't know. I don't know the status.
And I would say his project is unique, I think, in the way he's laid it out with a lot of that greenery. I would say that the majority of the mobile home parks that are built out there almost have no
Don't have the
landscape.
landscaping. I'm just curious what he's using to irrigate the landscaping.
Yeah,
He might not be using potable.
correct.
Right.
It's worth finding out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that'll affect the number.
Okay.
Thank you, Carrie.
Did we
Let's
want any public comment?
Slowly
or
make
no?
progress on this. Yeah, do we have anyone wishing to make a comment? James, come on up.
Yeah, I'm interested in this comment.
Me too.
I bet you like the cutting in half part.
I wonder if it was different before the board started talking.
All right, yeah, floor's yours, James.
Good morning, President, Directors. You guys have made a whole lot of great comments that were on my notes. Our primary concern with the DBBA has been this acre foot, or this cost per acre for basically buying supplemental water that nobody's selling. And so this has been a problem for DBBA for 5 years. You brought up some other issues, whereas the change of use, whether it's going directly from ag to development, yes, you would think there's some sort of supply conservation within that. But from what my personal experience, and this is not necessarily DBBA's point, is that those projects that where new development has come into, that line's usually been followed. It's been not in use for a while, or haven't been able to make any money, of course. What I wanted to look at particularly was with the DBBA conducts a comparative fee study on every 3 years. And our most recent one, and I'm looking at the city of La Quinta, and we're looking at a 35-unit, 10-acre project. The average units are about 2,500 square foot. So to look at that, we're looking at a $400 meter, a surcharge of $24.80, a water system backup facility charge of $37.07, a supplemental water supply charge of $34.91, and a sanitation capacity charge of $48.51. Now, Carrie was talking about that the fee is based on developed acre. In the past, I was here. I've been working for, whether it was a BIA Desert Chapter or DVBA since 2005. So when that came into effect, I got two different answers on how that fee was charged on the supplemental water supply. MSHCP was coming around at the same point in time. And so they're saying, well, we're just going to go by acre. It's a project of 10 acres. We're going to charge based on that, not based on actual areas that would be in use. So that included the street. You're not using water on the streets. But so that's how we've come up with our comparative study. It's comparative cost, and our consultant has actually gone to CVWD in the past, and so instead of, I believe the fee was like $3,000 for a 10,000 square foot lot, or $22.43, we're actually, on our understanding, is currently at $3,400 or almost $3,500. But there's so many moving parts because you got some savings on the need for potable within this process of going from a supplemental water charge to saying, okay, let's use an alternative source and making that essentially new water. We would like to see all the different categories in the math and offsets, and including what's it going to cost to put in a second meter. What's CVWD going to charge to go out there and inspect that system line and that design and connect? And is there going to eventually be a capacity charge along with that, just like the regular water supply? Based on the current laws, that would only seem to be fair and appropriate. But what does that cost, and is that going to be more expensive to the end user? And in a more dense population, that's even an additional higher cost in my mind until I see the full picture. My brain doesn't necessarily can't see one thing and pick it out and say, okay, that's a good thing. I need to see the full picture, and I'm destroying things. I'm sure you guys know where I live. I get a bill. But so I appreciate the continued dialogue and the process here. So I can focus on numbers by per unit, or per 1,000 square foot development, things like that. That makes no sense to me.
Yes.
So
I think I'd like to see that slide 7 with the per unit.
Sure.
Because right now you have this big number, but it's 166 units.
Mm-hmm.
Can we put a couple more columns on there and have it per unit cost?
Sure.
For each box.
Yeah.
But DVBA appreciates being part of the discussion and allow us to ask questions and review.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, that whole picture too, I agree. I mean, it's like, all right, so the model new development is going to be one with dual systems, so we might as well get a sense of what's the overall,
Okay.
all the fees, what would those be?
Okay.
Yeah, I like that comment.
What kind of fees do you have on the second meter? I mean, I don't know that we have the answer to that right now. It probably hasn't been developed. Anybody else wishing to comment? And I do have your study. I don't have Lakina, I have Palm Desert, but it's the same thing.
And we have your address too.
Yeah, they lay it out by per unit, which.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Very, very good. I mean, I think it's a good step.
Okay.
I had a feeling that was going to take off. Did we have anyone else wanting to comment on that particular item? No action, this is informational today. All right, so moving into the action items. Oh, I shut it off. I was eating. Yeah. It's breaking the rules. 9A. This is the vehicles. Do we have Stuart Taylor? Hey, good morning.
President Powell, Vice President Estrada, and distinguished members of the board. We are here this morning seeking authorization to purchase 5 vehicles and equipment in the amount of $545,601 and the disposal of up to 7 fleet units through public auction. In the interest of time, if it's okay with the board, instead of going in great detail and line by line, I'll just point out a couple highlights on the BAI.
So do you have the vehicles here before the old ones go away?
No.
It worries me, with everything, the supply chain's a real mess.
It is, that's.
Don't get rid of the old ones before the new ones show
No,
up.
we generally wait till the new vehicles arrive before we seek to dispose of the ones that we have in use currently. So I'll drop to the summary quickly. So the request consists of the purchase of 5 vehicles and equipment as noted above, and the purchases are scheduled replacements for fleet units that are approaching or have reached the end of their useful life. And the summary is in the attached Exhibit A. So there are 4 vehicles that are F550 utility beds with cranes that are 19,000 GVWR vehicles. These are ones that we had identified back when we did the CIB that we could downsize and save some dollars. So the ones that are being replaced are 26,000 GVWR trucks, quite large, and we're downsizing to these F550s that are gasoline powered. We originally had anticipated these would cost $125,000 a piece versus the $200,000 or more for the larger truck, and the quotes came in at just over $115,000. So we have an additional $39,000 in savings for those 4 vehicle purchases where we're downsizing. We have 1 Rome disc that is going to be utilized by the Stormwater Division to control vegetation in the stormwater. This disc will replace 3 old units that we've been trying to keep going for probably too long. So we're going to send those 3 old ones to auction and replace it with this 1 new unit. This one we had budgeted $60,000 and it did go up pretty significantly by about $24,000. So it's $84,853. So with the contingency request of $26,399, we are requesting a total authorization of $572,000. The purchases will be done through the Sourcewell Cooperative. The 4 vehicles will be through the National Auto Fleet Group, who we've been purchasing from for the last couple of years, through contract number 12716-NAF, and that's for $467.48. And then the disc will be purchased from RDO Equipment, and that's through contract number 062117 DAC, which is a Deere & Company. It's just a John Deere disc for $84,853. The disposal will happen through Ken Porter Auctions, which is who we've been using for quite a number of years. And in conclusion, the funding in the amount of $2,469,000 is included in the fiscal year 2022 motor pool capital improvement budget, and as such, their purchase of these 5 vehicles and equipment will not have an adverse effect. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Just curious, how big's that?
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so just a quick question. So you mentioned up to 7 units that would be disposed of. What are those other 2 units, and do you plan on coming back to the board to request replacement of those?
They're discs. It's the discs.
Right, so the 7 disposals are 4 vehicles, which are 1 for 1, and then we'll purchase 1 disc and dispose of the 3 old discs. So that's why we end up with more.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and so we won't come back to the board for any additional replacements in context of that.
Okay, thank you.
Just curious, how big's the disc?
21 feet.
21 feet?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this one is a hydraulic one so that it can transport more easily down the road versus the old ones that are quite difficult to move.
When you have
So
to
it'll
put
make
them
it a
on a
bit more mobile.
carry-all and.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, got it. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd move approval.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Bianco. Great. Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
And Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Passed 5-0.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart. Authorization to include Sites Reservoir Project Phase 2 Amendment 3 charges on the DWR Statement of Charges. Robert Chang.
Good morning again, sir.
Good morning.
So this request in front of you is to actually put the charges that are upcoming that have not been yet approved by the board for the years 22 to 25, I'm sorry, yeah, FY 22 to 25 on DWR statement of charges. The timing is a little bit off, just in the sense that there's 4 or 5 state water contractors who are participating on the sites project that would like the ability to put our charges on the DWR statement of charges, planning costs. And DWR's schedule is kind of moving a little bit ahead of the sites projects schedules. So this is when the Amendment 3 charges are available, which I anticipate probably like in October or November, from the sites. We'll be bringing those charges and requests in front of the board. But in the meantime, DWR, because they want to get the charges baked into their statements by January, before January, they have to start and finish the process in October. So the two processes, unfortunately, aren't synced up quite the way that we wanted to. So I just want to make sure that the board understands the request today is simply when the time comes to allow the statement of charges to be used as a vehicle for funding. So we're not talking about any costs yet to be placed on there, even though we do have some estimates. So just kind of give by the briefest of background, CVWD's participation in sites. So we started, on our import water side on the state water project back in the 60s. And one significant reminder is that in 67, this board actually authorized the collection of the costs associated with state water project on the statement of charges, on the state water project tax rather, as a vehicle. So when we move on to the 2000s, the Wanger decision back in 2007 actually effectively kind of sliced our state water project allocations by about half through the ESA. So in order to kind of make that up, the board was asked to consider participation in sites as off-stream storage back in 16 and 2017. And the board did allow us to enter into agreement for Proposition 1 funding to explore that pot of money. And in that process, the board authorized $1.1 million for our participation level at that time of 26,500 acre feet. The number seems a little bit large at the time just because there was uncertainty surrounding Cal Water Fix. So we thought we'd be a little conservative and go a little higher. So kind of moving on to 2019, we entered into phase 2. So out of phase 1, Sites project was able to secure $816 million against a project cost of about $5 billion from the state of California. In phase 2, CVWD downsized our participation down 10,000 acre feet because I think there was a little bit more certainty, well, at the time we thought, surrounding the tunnel project. So we reduced our participation down to 10,000 acre feet. The board at that time authorized our participation in phase 2, which is for permitting and planning purposes, for $650,000 in 2019. If you look at the top bar for 2019, the board also authorized for us to place phase 2 costs on DWR statement of charges, although we never executed that. Because at the time we thought the cost was going to be a little bit more substantial. This project has been a work in progress. And the last action that the board authorized was back in 2020 to allow additional $1 million to complete phase 2 amendment 2 work. So today's action is actually to request the placement of the amendment 3 work, which will cover a period of between 22 to 24, the end of 24, on the statement of charges when it becomes available. And then you'll see like the little green box on the bottom. We anticipate later this year or the beginning of next year for sites to come back with their proposal for the formalized Amendment 3 for not just this board, but for all the boards to consider action on. And we anticipate that cost to be in the neighborhood about $400 acre foot, kind of broken down in increments of 140, 100, 160 for 22 through 24. So these costs are actually covered or baked into our future budgets. So we've actually looked at this. But obviously, that requires an action on the behalf of this board to participate in future actions. So kind of finishing out the discussion, we anticipate the construction to start perhaps in 2025. That's when the real dollars will hit and requires debt financing. And right now, the online date for this project is slated for somewhere in the 2030s, in the early 2030s. So with that, that's the presentation and that's the ask. So I'd open up for any kind of questions.
Thank you, Robert.
I think I know, Robert, but what's the benefit of putting the charges on the DEWR statements?
Thank you, sir. So we do have a couple of different payment mechanisms. We can use rates, or else we can use the statement of charges if the board authorizes. I think using the rates, I think we might have looked at it and it just wasn't the best option, I think. Looks like the statement of charges option allows, a better cost spread, if you will, on the property taxes. So, we do see a direct connection between this and our imported water supply, which I think the board authorized way back in the 60s. I'm not sure whether that completely answers your question.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from those online?
No.
No. Fair enough.
I'd move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. All right, so we're going to handle 9C after we reconvene from the closed session. So on to 9D. East Side Dike Improvement Project Phase 1. David, good morning.
Good morning again. All right, the purpose of this item is to authorize the general manager to execute a construction contract with Bosco Constructors Incorporated as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder in the amount of $2,349,513 for the East Side Dike, an improvement project Phase 1, which is from Dune Palms Road to Interstate 10, specification number 2018-63. It is also recommended that the board authorize the general manager to execute task order number 20-19 with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants in the amount of $80,500 to provide engineering services during construction, and task order number 3 with NV5 in the amount of $87,688 for geotechnical services and concrete testing during construction. The total cost of this request, which includes a 10% contingency, is $2,989,471. As you may know, the East Side Dike was constructed and completed in 1949 by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation as part of the protective works for the Coachella branch of the All-American Canal. We do know that the dike provides a physical obstruction for the flood hazards that emanate from the mountains that surround the area. However, it is not recognized by FEMA as a flood control structure, and therefore the folks within the North Indio area, Talavera being one of them, have to pay flood insurance for any mortgages backed by the federal government. And so this project will allow for us to bring the dike into compliance with FEMA standards and allow us to remove the statutory requirement for carrying flood insurance in this area. The project is included in the current fiscal year budget in the amount of $3 million. Therefore, there will be no adverse impact to the budget. We also have a federal grant fund, which is 75% of the cost, covered by Cal OES and FEMA. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, I have a question about that, David. So that the grant that comes in, if this project's 2.9 and the grant pays 75% of that, does that mean we're only paying 25% of the 2.9?
Yes. I believe we pay everything up front and then they reimburse us.
Okay. This is a great deal.
Yes.
Who got that? That's
David,
fantastic.
I have a question.
Go
I'd
ahead.
say it was all me, but no.
Okay, question from Director Bianco.
David, is my understanding that CVWD is in the works to do this type of analysis or project throughout the whole canal all the way to North Shore?
Yes, the phase 2 portion of this project would be the 17-mile reach from down or south of Interstate 10 to the North Shore area, which would achieve the same goals.
Okay, that's wonderful.
So this is, what's the length of this stretch?
I believe it's 5 miles, but don't quote me on that.
Doesn't look like 5 miles.
The improvements required are just what you see here. It's a very small portion of the dike.
Yeah. So we might expect, just looking ahead, we might expect $10 million on that 17-mile stretch? If its conditions are somewhat the same?
Yes, we're still working through the alternatives to address it right now, some of which may be to remove some of the sediment that's built up in the back.
In the back, yeah.
That currently impacts its
Yeah.
freeboard.
Yeah.
But yes,
Maybe we could sell that sediment get some money out of that.
we could try.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'd move approval.
Second.
Thank you. All right, roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
There've been a lot of people who've asked me about getting rid of that flood insurance, so I'm super happy that this is going forward. So thanks, David. Aye.
And I thank you.
That's good. All right, so your next one, if we had a bell, we'd ring it. I don't remember having a single project award of over $100 million. Maybe we have. Actually, we might have done it on Chrome 6, but then we never awarded the contract.
That's right.
Right? We never actually signed it.
Yeah.
That might be the only one that's bigger than this. Anyways, so go ahead.
Okay. The purpose of this item is to authorize the general manager to execute a construction contract with Suka Construction LLC in the amount of $88,797,618 for the North Indio Regional Flood Control Project Phase 2, specification number 2020-56. It is also recommended that the board authorize the general manager to execute task order number 11 with Albert A. Webb and Associates as the engineer of record in the amount of $1,051,278 to provide engineering services during construction. Task order number 4 with NV5 in the amount of $376,636 for soils and concrete testing during construction. And task order number 12 with Michael Baker International in the amount of $56,400 also to provide engineering services during construction and some supplemental structural engineering support. In addition, it is recommended that the board authorize the general manager to enter into a construction and maintenance easement agreement with Sun City HOA, which includes a reimbursement to the Sun City HOA for on-site repairs within the project footprint in the amount of $680,427.35. There's a whole list of other items related to utility relocations that are listed on here that I'm happy to go into. But in view of what I expect would be the larger discussion Suffice it to say, the total cost of this request, which includes a 5% contingency, is $97,582,488. We do have WIFIA funding for this project. The interest associated with that is $12,627,349, bringing the total ultimate cost for this project at $110,209 or $209,837. The project is included in the current year capital improvement budget within the stormwater fund in the amount of $27 million. The balance will be budgeted in FY23 and FY24. We expect the current budget to be able to handle the cost for this year. However, if the pace of the work of the contractor goes up, we would bring it before board to see about a budget amendment and reduce the subsequent budgets for the following years. The project, as you know, has been in the making for over 10 years. We had to rerun the hydrology hydraulics on this project. It brings an immense value to the region. This is a key component in connecting the existing stormwater channels within Sun City Shadow Hills and Sun City Palm Desert to allow for the Thousand Palms flood hazards to be conveyed ultimately into the Coachella Valley Stormwater Channel. And it contributes to a removal of the flood hazards within the North Indio proper area. The Sun City Shadow Hills High School and the elementary schools there currently are within a flood hazard that is as much as 5 feet deep. So there is an immense value there. And this project, coupled with the Thousand Palms flood control project, the levees in that area proposed, the North Cathedral City project, and the Thousand Palms Channel, will ultimately bring the entire region, or most of the region north of Interstate 10, out of a flood zone, which is a big plus, I think, for the communities in this area. We advertised for bids in April. We put this project out in April. We had a sense that the cost of this project was going to be higher than we had anticipated when we went out, as we were seeing some projects come in, some change orders. We were seeing material costs. Obviously, the supply chain, as you know, has been an issue. And so you never really know how it's going to come out until you start to see the bids. But as the questions were coming in, we were starting to realize that it may be even higher than we had thought it was going to be. We entertained the idea of tying some of the bid items to an index to allow some flexibility in the cost. We debated and discussed that internally. We discussed this with legal counsel. Ultimately, it was decided that was too hard to manage, and there was too much risk associated with that. But what we did do is we extended the contract or the bid advertisement. We had intended to open it up in June, but we extended it to August to see if the market, which, as you know, has been very volatile as we're coming out of the pandemic, to see if it would settle down. And it did to some degree as it relates to lumber costs. I think lumber back in June was about 130%. Up. It's from the fall of the previous year. It's still up. It's about 87%. Diesel fuel is up about 200% right now. Rebar is up about 50%. Concrete in some areas is up about 37%. In general, the timeline of this contract, the volatility of the market, we think has caused contractors to hedge a little bit, as much as 15%. Given that we have a 2-year construction timeline and nobody really knows what's going to happen with the market in that regard. So with that, I will field any questions.
So what did you think it would come in at originally, the bid?
Well, the original bid, when we went, when we advertised, we thought it was going to be between 65 and 70.
Between 65 and 70. Yeah, and the spread was what, 25 million from the top to bottom?
Yeah, there was an outliers, I think it was Granite was about 30% high. The average of the other three was around 100,000. So we are getting a discount as it relates to the market.
Somewhat better than that, yeah.
Yeah.
On the funding from the BAI, it says there's the WIFIA loan of 33 million, cash and reserves of 34 million, and then this other 30 million, it says alternative financing option and or reserve fund. What does that mean?
Well, I think we were going to look into, I think we were just going to look into see if there's any other options out there for us as the project while the project is in play, we were going to look to see if there's other options for financing.
So possibly
That's-
grant or what?
Whatever's out there.
I mean, they're doing
yes.
this,
I
like
don't-
that
most- I don't
infrastructure
think-
bill, maybe something from there?
Yeah, yes. Most of the grants you wouldn't get a grant once something's already in construction, but we're going to look into whatever we can find.
Okay.
They're printing money in DC.
That's the only place they can print it. Yeah. All right, I think we had a question from online. Who's that?
Well, I have a question. When you get to me, this is Director Aguilar.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So David, is Suquette Construction, are they a minority or otherwise in that category firm? And if not, is there a way, because I couldn't find it in the staff report, maybe it's in there someplace, what percentage of these dollars, which is a huge expenditure of public funds, are going to minority firms?
I do not believe Sukkot is a minority firm, but I cannot confirm that at this moment, and I don't have that breakdown right now to answer your question, but I could provide that.
I know the federal government has contracting goals to provide additional consideration for minority and small business, woman-owned, disabled vet, but I don't believe California allows that.
The WIFIA funding encourages, but there was not a specific requirement.
Well, I appreciate that, and I recognize that it may not be a requirement, but I think in the spirit of spreading the wealth, that should always be something that we strive to do. So if you could give me that information, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Will do.
Okay. All right. Anything else before we go to the vote? I guess we need a motion to approve.
Yeah.
We've already acquired all the land.
Everyone's gun shy.
It's only 110 million.
Let me just ask this before we.
Go ahead.
On the same topic of the 30 million, the alternative financing option. So right now, it sounds like we know where the 32 is coming from. 34, we're saying it's cash and reserve fund. At a certain point, you're going to come to us and say we need to secure this additional 30 either by some internal revenue or what's the schedule on that 30 million?
Yeah, I think we would come to you, but if maybe Carrie or Finance wants to
just build it in the
speak to
budget.
that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm just trying to figure out. Are you gonna put it in the budget over the next however many years this project is gonna take?
And I would offer.
In other words, we're concerned about this blank check of $30 million.
I would offer, if I may, I think we have a $195 million 5-year budget in stormwater. And so obviously we will be making adjustments to that to address the cost.
Fair answer.
Director Estrada, we are working on this. We can temporarily use reserves in the fund, dipping even below target per our new reserve policy. And we're looking at having additional debt financing for this and other projects. We will be coming back to the board.
Okay, I guess and you triggered my memory that this fund is the one that has the largest reserve, right?
It is, but we don't want to just spend down the reserves. That's not the best option.
Right, specifically for this fund, because we cannot manage it the same way. It's not a 218 issue. In order to increase the rate here, we need either a 2/3 or 3/4 affirmative vote from the population, and they're not going to vote to increase tax rates, so.
We're not going to be proposing that, and we're not going to be proposing delaying this project.
So we will take it out of reserves at the last.
If we need to.
If we need to, when we have reserves. It's just going to then impact our ability to move forward with other projects because we've drawn down that fund, and it'll affect our credit rating and maybe affect our ability to bond forward, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
With that being said, it almost sounds like we're heading in that direction. And so my question would be, do you have a sense already of what projects you would push out? The top two? I mean, I don't know if they're big enough where it's just two of them or you gotta get 4 or 5, but.
I think it's frankly a board decision. By my druthers, the priorities are the 10, which is Virginia City, Thousand Palms.
Is your mic on? I think somebody's gonna.
Okay, so with that, when you bring it back, let's have that conversation about which projects are gonna make up that 30 million. At least for me, that would be important. Thank you.
You were listing, David, your top priority projects.
I'm kind of glad the mic wasn't on.
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if those are the ones you're going to cut or the ones that are the top priority.
Well, in terms of the already developed or more urbanized areas, I guess North Cathedral City and Thousand Palms projects bring an immense value to the economy in the valley. But that's certainly not my call. We have other projects that are East Valley. We have the Stormwater Master Plan that calls out for levees on the Oasis area. And so we can bring all that to you once we get a sense for what we need to do.
All right, fair. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move approval.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so we have a motion, a second. I would just say, I mean, I know this federal infrastructure bond thing, whatever it is, bill, it keeps changing, but it seems like this would be the perfect sort of thing for that.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, I mean, we're not only shovel ready, we've got it, I mean, we've turned some dirt, right? So.
yeah, I don't know how we go about that, but we should do it whenever we can. All right, so there's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Pass 5-0. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
On to this property acquisition, item F. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning. So my request won't be as much as Mr. Wilson.
We don't have any money left.
So before I get into my presentation, I'd like just to turn your attention to the map just to sort of help orient everybody. So over on the westerly side is the Arco Travel Center owned by Mr. Chandi. As you go east, you have the multi-owner parcel. As you go further east, there's 2 remaining parcels. Those are the Chew parcels. And on the south side of Avenue 66 is the county-owned parcel. If you go further all the way to the west, those are the Burkett parcels, which the board authorized and approved those agreements last month, a month ago. So just wanted to at least orient you before I get into this. And so really, I'm just going to refer to these parcels as the Chandi parcel, multi-owner parcel, Chew parcels, and county-owned parcels. So the purpose of this board action item is to authorize the general manager to sign these various right-of-way agreements, which really are intended to give us either possession or easements for our 30-inch pipeline along Avenue 66, which you know as the St. Anthony Mobile Home Park project. So the board was very interested in understanding where some of these agreements were last month. And so I'm happy to report that we did reach an agreement with Chandi and his team to have an executed agreement with them, and that's part of this board package. On the multi-owner parcel, I'm requesting $59,000 to be deposited into escrow. And this escrow will help also release some funds to help clear out some probate issues. There's about 12 owners on this parcel. And what we're trying to do is get everybody to sign off on the actual agreement to acquire the rights away. And so we also are working on an eminent domain proceeding as we speak to get possession. And just to be clear, possession does not mean that we're done. We still have to get the easements formally acquired and negotiated. Possession means we can enter onto the property and construct the pipeline if need be. Similarly, with the Chews, they've agreed to give us possession of the easements that we've requested. We still need to conclude negotiations with them. Right now, they're currently negotiating rights of way with the County of Riverside, concurrently with our request. And so there's a little bit of a interplay between these negotiations, and which is why you see the possession agreement for the Chews. Going to the south side of Avenue 66, we have a little portion of pipeline easement that we need. This is currently a county-owned parcel, and they've agreed to give us an encroachment permit for this piece. However, they are looking at disposing of this triangular-shaped parcel because they no longer need it. So part of this board request is to have Dawkin conduct an appraisal and look at either acquiring an easement for this piece or perhaps the entire triangular portion. So that is a very broad overview of this request. There are other additional costs here for closing costs, title costs, things of that nature. And so in general, for the Chandi parcels, the request is to approve the agreement in the amount of $153,600, which would really constitute constructing 2 stubs as part of our project. And that's what that value represents. The Chew parcels is to approve the possession and use agreements contained in the board packet. We are continuing to negotiate with them, and so I'm asking for $60,000 based on an appraised value of $49,500. That $60,000 would hopefully cover whatever we can negotiate with them, along with incidental expenses. Similarly, the multi-owner parcel, I'm requesting authorization for $59,000 to be deposited into escrow to help move that process forward. Again, we're also on a concurrent path with the eminent domain action as well, just to ensure that if one of the 12 owners, for example, doesn't agree to give us the easement, we have the eminent domain action to back this up. Lastly, there's a task order with Dawkin to help do the appraisal for the county-owned parcel, along with some incidental expenses for a total request of $387,100. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer.
So that eminent domain takes a while, doesn't it? I mean,
It does. I just saw an email as I was sitting in here. It's still moving forward. But even if we do get that, we still have to work out and get documents signed and executed. And so it is a huge step forward for us where we can construct this pipeline if need be. But on the back end, it just buys us time that we still have to work through title issues and things of that nature.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the goal, obviously, is to give us the ability to construct this pipeline whenever we've secured funding, which we're currently seeking, as you know.
Okay.
Would you say, though, that for this portion that covers this easement, the funding has been secured?
So we have secured $7 million. I haven't seen it yet. I understand it's imminent. We're still waiting for details on that. But let's say that comes in tomorrow and we have these agreements executed and we have funds deposited into escrow. Very shortly thereafter, I believe we can go out to bid and start looking at construction.
Okay, because I do see that you put here a date of fall 2021, which
yes, we have been working very hard. A lot of us to get to this point. This is a huge milestone.
And I think and I'll just mention this because it's tied to this project, but have we resolved the issue with, I think we were waiting on the earmark money from Congress because that had to be used first versus the 7 that we got at the state. Is that still an issue?
So I've not seen the 2.7 million yet. We're still tracking that.
Sure.
And I think there's still some processes it's going through.
All right, well, I guess in general, I'd say, is that an issue? Are we dealing with that as an issue as well?
We are. For this project, as you know, there's many multiple pieces. It's a big jigsaw puzzle. So we're not only seeking that money, we're also seeking dollars from USDA as well as additional dollars from the state concurrently. And so depending on who we're talking to, there's various scenarios that we've put out there to try and secure funding. So it gets a little complicated with the number of funding sources that we're pursuing.
Okay. I think I'd like to maybe get a refresher on that offline or whenever it's appropriate, just so that it's not that's holding us up. If we are in fact getting to a point where we're ready to go out to bid and start moving dirt.
Sure. I mean, the plans are nearly complete pending concluding negotiations with a few of the owners. And so we feel we could be ready to go out to bid as soon as we get the funding secured this fall.
I don't know if your question's been fully answered, but I'll just say that both of those pots of funding are still progressing as anticipated. We've had our lobbyist, Chris Kahn, talk to the State Department of Treasury regarding how we access that $7 million, and it looks like it's going to be transferred to the Water Board for their release, but it hasn't happened yet. So while that's progressing, while the 2.7 million is progressing, and until either of them are complete, our timeline will depend on those, but they're both moving forward in the way that we anticipated. And we're staying in touch with both finance and engineering about the progress of both of those pots of funding.
Okay, thank you. And then I know last time we spoke to this senator's office, they gave us a time frame of September, or was it November?
They told us September. I don't know if Victoria has any updated information, but I think we're still on track.
Okay.
I think we'll hear about that pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question about how you handle either the Chandi or I think there was another property over there. I don't mean to call them out, but if we're installing 2 stubs for water use, how I think that's 150,000 in the one case.
Correct.
And then on the west side, I'm not sure about that one, but it doesn't matter. But my question revolves around, then what do you do on those stub outs with backup system facility charges and supplemental imported water charges and meter charge? How does that factor into this?
Sure. Per the agreement, this is just for the improvements noted.
Mm-hmm.
Any fees, all the fees that you mentioned, they still are obligated to pay, based on whatever is in effect at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So this in no way is related to payment of any of those fees.
Okay. All right, that's the only question I had.
Okay. Good. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Good.
And I'll just say that I'm really happy that this is moving along, and thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you have 2 happy.
Second.
Okay, yeah, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Powell?
Aye.
Vice President Estrada?
Aye.
Director Bianco?
Aye.
Director Aguilar?
Aye.
And Director Nelson?
Aye.
Thank you.
That passed 5-0. Thanks, Dan. So item G is the insurance, D&O insurance. It's a hard market, isn't it? Elizabethtown.
Good morning.
Mm-hmm. Good morning.
This board action item is to request authorization for the general manager to purchase directors and officers liability insurance for an amount up to $619,500 with Aegis Insurance Company, or an alternative, should the district obtain more beneficial quotes. At this time, we have received all the quotes that we will be receiving, and At this point, Aegis is the best one on the table. The next best offered limits of only 2.5 million with a $1 million self-insured retention at 500,000, and it would exclude anything related to any type of a loss we have had in the past. So at this point, Aegis is what's on the table. Of note, I'm not sure if you all caught this, but back in July, when we renewed the rest of our insurance, our employment practices liability was shifted over to our excess liability policy with Aegis. So that portion is no longer covered under this, but the public director's policy does also provide a type of entity coverage that we have had for years, and that's where some of our claims lie that, you know, cause somewhat of a higher premium in addition to the hard market. But do you have any questions?
No, I thought it was well laid out. I mean, we don't really have much of a choice here, I don't think. The
Not at this
recommendation is,
time.
It's just so dang expensive.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the consequence of people filing a bunch of lawsuits. Right?
Yep, for sure. I'd move approval.
All right, well, thank you. Then I would request authorization for this item in an amount of, or up to $619,500.
Right. So there's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Giving them a moment. Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks.
10 o'clock.
All right. So we're at this 10A board member general comments. Why don't we start with Director Aguilar?
Oh, thank you. I have no comments.
Okay, thanks. Director Bianco.
No comments at this time.
Going alphabetical. Vice President Estrada.
No comments.
Nelson.
So I have a number of comments that I'd like to make concerning a lot of, and I'll make a few greater comments now and then skip through my reporting. How's that? I won't skip through it. I'll report on them, but very briefly. We have been doing a lot of work through the Colorado River Board, through the districts, Coachella, all the contractors, and having a lot of meetings. You see a lot of meetings that Robert and I and Jim have been attending. And I just wanted to give a little update as to what's going on in that realm. You know, as you know, Lake Mead and Lake Powell levels are going down. We have a very dry hydrology, but we're experiencing the worst 20-year record in the last 100 years. And with that, we're seeing 84% of water runoff at Lee Ferry down to 12.4. You know, we're allocated somewhere around 17.5. And, you know, normal flow is about 15 million. So we're at 12.4. So hydrology is low. California, incidentally, has been using only less than our 4.4 with ICS water and so forth, but demands are high in the upper basin, demands are high overall in the lower basin, although California has been using a little bit less. So we had an 89% average of snowpack, which is a good year, but that has related into only a 30% average runoff, which is very, very low. So at Lake Powell's only expected to get 3 million acre feet of water this year into Lake Powell. We're using, and then we're using in the lower basin, our 7.65, around there. So Lake Powell is going down as well as Lake Mead. Currently, Lake Powell is about 7.8 million acre feet, which is only 30% of capacity. And Mead has just over 9 million acre feet, which is 35% of capacity. Pretty dang low. Reclamation's August 24-month study had projections that would put both of the lakes into would define the operations as in a tier 1 drought condition. So Coachella under the DCP does not make any contributions in a tier 1 or a tier 2, which is 1075 and 1050, but at 1045, Coachella would need to make about 14,000 acre foot of contributions to that process, which would come out of the 35,000 acre feet of water that we're putting up in Whitewater on an annual basis. So we're in the shortage condition, but also in the 24-month study, in the 24th month, the 2 years out, we're seeing that levels at Lake Mead could go below 1030. So that initiates under the DCP a trigger for reconsultation of the DCPs and 07 guidelines. So that's kind of where we're at there. We have a 5% allocation on the state water projects. So California is doing a lot of work in working with the other states. We set up 4 committees to look at what we can do in the interim under the 1030 guidelines. And those committees were options and strategies of how we could come up with more conserved water. California thinking, what could we do either by districts or paid for by the federal government, or and all the states are looking at what we can do to address the really dry hydrology sooner than the 2026 renegotiation. So we're coming up with those strategies and ideas and possibilities. We're also looking how to engage Mexico. So there's a group about how to engage Mexico into this process. We're looking at environmental compliance because we only anticipated certain reductions of releases out of Hoover Dam by 850,000 acre feet. So there's some certain stretches that we need to look at from an environmental aspect. And then what was the other one, Robert?
I think it was ICS.
Oh yeah, ICS storage and flexibility, and how we might modify that to improve our position in the water management on the river. So those are the lower basin. Those are lower basin committees, and the lower basin is working very hard. We did cancel a 7 basin states meeting in Santa Fe because we felt like we had a lot of work to do in the lower basin at home, and that we really didn't have a good agenda to move forward with the 7 basin states. So we've been working hard at that, and that's where we stand. And if anyone would have any questions, just let me know. So those are my comments this morning. And
So we learned a new word. I think Steve Bigley was there. Sublimation?
Sublimation?
Is that the word? When snow goes directly into evaporated water and doesn't flow down the river? Is that right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of scary.
That is scary, right?
Yeah. it's supposed to melt and turn into water and go into the river, and it doesn't do that. Yeah, that's scary. Thank you for what you're doing on Colorado River, Peter.
Yeah.
It's an important role, really important role.
Yeah, and, you know, I know a lot of farmers and a lot of, you know, Colorado River water users in Coachella are interested in that. And, you know, we also support a position for CBWD. And, you know, I'm working on behalf of the state, but I'm also, you know, working on behalf of CBWD. And Robert's been involved, Jim's been involved, and, but, you know, the staff's been very, very engaged on these issues.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
My comments, none particularly. I'll cover some things in the notes, meeting notes. When do we get into that? August 2, Director Nelson, we had the 7 Basin.
Yeah, so we all met together.
Kind of scary having them all show up in Santa Fe. We're not going to do a new compact, are we?
Yeah, right. No, this 7, let's see, where am I at here? This 7 Basin States was actually in Salt Lake City. And it was a 2-day meeting, and we came out with that with a list that we presented to later meetings. We presented to Reclamation about how we wanted to work cooperatively with the models and how we wanted them to dedicate more expertise and their staff to, you know, our dry hydrology out here.
Perfect. All right. August 9th, Dr. Strada with Senator Padilla.
Yeah, I mentioned that just recently that we met with Senator Padilla's staff to talk about a 2.7, I believe 2.7 million ask to be part of that Avenue 66 bridge project that we just covered.
Okay. And then Director Nelson, you had the actual meeting on the 9th. You covered that already, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
The Salt Lake meeting.
Yeah.
And then the first one was the prep. And then on the 11th, we had Director Strada with the planning meeting with staff.
Yes, I had a meeting that was scheduled for August 12th, that Safer Advisory Group meeting that I've been a part of, representing the district. And so on the 11th, we got together to cover some of the topics that we were going to talk about on the 12th.
Mm-hmm. Good. And then on the 12th, I had the DVBA board meeting. A lot of important discussion there about regional issues. August 12th, Safer Advisory Group, Director Strada.
Yeah, those are our regular meetings. We, I think, generally meet about 4 times a year, and we try to prioritize the budget. And during this last meeting, we had a conversation about how that budget should be prioritized, and just went over the general fund that the Safer staff kind of manages. So they have a lot of money. And as an update, I believe we're planning to meet in person again in Sacramento for meeting number 3. We haven't met in person for, I think, almost 2 years now.
Okay. August 13th, Director Nelson, another meeting.
We met with the PR people, with Reclamation and the 7 Basin States, and we went through the Zoom logistics for our press conference, which was on the 16th.
Okay. 13th, Director Estrada on the Oasis Mobile Home Park.
So I think we're all aware that there was about $30 million that was made available through the state budget process for purposes of relocating the Oasis mobile home park residents. And there's been an attempt to try to identify what that project is or what that project looks like. That would be funded with the $30 million. There's a number of groups that are involved in trying to figure that out, including County of Riverside, ourselves here at CVWD, being that we would play a role in providing services, and the Assembly Member's office, the Congressman's office. But in this situation, it was really a conversation with the Director of Housing and Community, HCD. And so he came and visited us that day to really try to hear about these potential options. And so we were there representing some of the projects that we're working on and their schedules based on our grant applications, to try to give a sense to folks of, based on that timeline, when they could realistically have a project at either of these locations, which were primarily in Mecca and Thermal Oasis area. So a lot of effort being made there. It's moving along too, but I think there's still a lot more work to do, but that was that.
Okay, thanks. Director Nelson, you had the next two on this BOR 24 months
Yeah,
study.
so the rollout of the 24-month study with all of the negative hydrology was rolled out. BOR did that, so attended that. And then afterwards, we had a press conference, which the 7 basin states sat in on. I think actually there were 4 of us there. And I made the points that California had already put in 1.37 million acre feet of ICS water supporting Lake Mead, and that we had a process through the DCP that we were contributing water in as in the future as needed. And it was the announcement of the Tier 1 shortage and 2030 reconsultation to the public. We had a bunch of reporters on the line, so.
Okay, good. August 16, Director Estrada with staff and State Water Resources.
Let's see here. I believe, let me just check my calendar real quick, but yeah, I think that was a meeting that we had with Water Resources staff to, I think, go over some of the, well, it was a meeting that we were in, right, Katie? With Michelle? Yeah, we had a conversation about, as I mentioned earlier, during the budget process that allocates money to these different priorities, which are really buckets. There's one for construction, there's one for technical assistance, there's one for like emergency water. And one of the things that I've been trying to encourage is the ability for public agencies to be able to tap into this technical assistance money. It seems to be a pot that has a lot of dollars, which is really meant to do a lot of the planning and the technical aspects of getting projects shovel ready. And it seems like under the current construct, a lot of that money is made available to the nonprofits that operate either here locally or in the Central Valley. And so I'm trying to encourage a way to allow us as public agencies who seem to already be doing a lot of that work to be able to tap into that funding as well. So the conversation was kind of centered around that idea.
I'm going to step out for a second. If you guys have the next several meetings, so just keep going.
All right, so
There's a bunch.
I'm up on the those are the EAC meetings. So we went over the EIR for the Whitewater River Groundwater Replenishment Facility. Everything seemed to make sense. I believe there was another was there another project in there? Oh, that's right. So we're also working on rehabilitating an IXTP plant somewhere in the Mecca area, and we went over that project as well. But I think we're trying to fund that through a USDA application, which requires us to do certain environmental triggers, and so that seems to be also in the right path. So those are the two projects we covered. The next meeting, Director Nelson on the 19th.
Yeah, so on the 19th, I had attended, I'll admit I wasn't totally focused on the data summit, but I had it going off to the side here, and because it was all day, right? And so I did attend that, and there was a lot of good things about that. Katie, our own Katie Evans, is the president, chairperson of that organization, and the whole focus is to get, well, I shouldn't speak for you, but this is what I got from that, is that the focus is to try and get reliable data into public agencies that they can use and to manage and move forward. So it was a good day, and there are a lot of examples of using good data and bad data, and so these folks are trying to find ways by which to manage with good data. Yeah, there you go. And we're also, that was on our consent calendar today, right? We're supporting for the next 5 years. Yeah, so good for you.
Thank you. I think you have the next one as well on the 23rd.
Right, the 23rd was the California Farm Water Coalition. We had a great meeting, a lot of good discussion. Obviously, the issues of the drought and so forth bring up a lot of good discussions. But one thing I'll report on today is the California Farm Water Coalition had committed over a 10-year period $1 million to the Powerhouse Science Center in Sacramento. And it is now morphed into the Mosaic Museum, which stands for, I gotta get this right, I even wrote it down, the Museum of Science, Information, and Curiosity, Mosaic. So a big portion, it's actually in an old powerhouse building right along the Sacramento River in Sacramento, and it's about to open, and the Water Coalition, the big part of the museum is a water features, and so the coalitions played a big role in the messaging and the production of the exhibits and so forth. And so I think that's one real big benefit of the Water Coalition, being able to provide good messaging for California water, especially in farming and agriculture, in what we hope will become a prominent museum in Sacramento. So, so
we could take the legislative report.
that's good work that they're doing there.
Right. Next.
26th.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, on August 26th, we have the Legislative Committee meeting. Director Aguilar and myself participated. We went over, I think, a lot of bills that day, including state and federal bills. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do remember that there was a lot of what appeared to me to be related to maybe what you can call environmental justice type bills, bills trying to create what I heard was almost similar in nature to maybe what some of the electrical companies have, where there's lower rates for economically disadvantaged folks. So there were some of those bills. There was the Chad Mays bill, which I think we all know what that looks like now. But I'll just, I think we gotta, I think at the end of the day, we summarized that we were at the end of session. We had a sense of what bills were going to the governor and the support that they had or have. And there wasn't anything in there that I think we were opposed to. It seemed like everything was pretty straightforward. So nothing too controversial. I think everything we were either in support or we were on watch, but there wasn't anything that we were opposing. So it seemed pretty straightforward. And Director Aguilar, do you have anything additional?
Oh, thanks. The only additional comment I would make is, and thank you, by the way, for that update from the meeting, but is that we did have an update on the federal infrastructure bill that, as you all know, has been passed in two different formats between the Senate and the House. And so I think it remains to be seen how that's going to be hammered out in terms of what's going to be allocated for special districts. They were talking about a $50 billion set aside. I'm not sure where that lands today, but there also was talk about a set aside for small communities and disadvantaged communities. So I'm hoping to see that stay in. But no, other than that, no other comments.
Thank you. And then Director Nelson, I think you had the next two.
We have the next three, actually. So on the 27th, the California agencies met regarding, moving forward with issues on the the 1030 renegotiations and the 2026. Robert and Jim both made some good comments that day about California's issues, and it was a good meeting to kind of get a consensus that we've always looked at this 100-year hydrology, and now we're looking at the last 20 years and kind of wrapping our arms around the not support for that, but an acknowledgement that that's the reality of today. So that was a good meeting. And then on the next step for the 1030 guidelines, let's see, that was the whole lower basin, coming up with some priorities for the Bureau was the biggest part of that one. And then on the working group, we met for the third and final consultation of the Colorado River Management Group meeting for the 2022 annual operating plan. And so that is kind of just a wrap up, but usually on the third consultation, it's just like, okay, these are all the changes we made, check the box, they're good. But Robert was included in that and making some substantial changes in the third operating plan, and you can tell that it's just the issues of the day are causing us to change a lot of things. So on those issues, mostly revolved around incorporating the DCP into as we implement the DCP, wrapping those into the plan. And how the wording and so forth appears in the plan. So that's what we did that day.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, September 7th, I met with Chairman Gruby of Agua Caliente, and it was just the two of us. We spent a couple hours together. It went really well. Really appreciated his time, and we covered a lot of different area. It's really, I think the idea is that we can develop a sense of trust, and I think we've gone a long ways along in that direction. Good. So it's good. CVAG on the 9th, Director Bianco.
I did not attend.
What did he say? No. September 10th, we had Director Strada and I attended this plenary session with tribal mediation. There was a lot of people there. And I think there was an expression of hope that there's been more progress lately in that mediation effort than what they had seen over the prior several months. I buy that. Good.
I agree.
Yeah, good. Let's see, the last one on the list, Director Strawn and I were on a Zoom yesterday with the mayor and mayor pro tem of the city of Indian Wells. And I went over the usual routine with them. It was a nice meeting. Incidentally, Balaco's on the CVEC. Yeah, I didn't know when we had the call yesterday. I didn't connect that dot till later in the day.
Which dot is that?
It's the
Coachella Valley Energy Commission.
Energy Commission.
Oh, okay.
IID's.
Represents the Cove communities. Yeah. Imagine you're going to report on that probably because you were there, but I had one more that's not on this list, or maybe you did when I wasn't in the room, but I did sit down for about 2 hours yesterday at our Coachella office with Director Hamby from IID, and we covered a lot of ground as well. It was a good meeting. I learned a lot. I think he might have also. We can talk more later about that. Are there other meetings that we need to report on that are not on the list?
I attended on the Zoom, the IID Farmers Advisory Committee, Conservation Advisory Committee. And I don't need to put it on the list, but the thought that I would say is the farmers are, in hearing Tina's report of the same thing I'm reporting on, the farmers down there seem ready and willing to conserve water and kind of initiate back some of their programs that they dropped off because they've had lack of storage there. And so they were going to express that to the board and of course also tackle the price per acre foot for the conservation as well. But they've been paid the same, I think, the last 4 or 5 years, and the escalators have gone up for the payments to IID. So and obviously, as we find out in our contracts, prices go up as well. So I thought it was a point well taken, but I just thought that was an interesting part of their discussion there. So.
Thank you. Any others?
Yes, I have, on September 8th, I did attend what they call the U.S. Water Alliance California Consolidation Project convening number 3. It's put on by this group called U.S. Water Alliance, and they're working together with a bunch of other nonprofits, including the State Water Board staff from the SAFER program. And I think their focus has been to try to figure out how to create changes within the application process for projects to be completed sooner than later. And so that's kind of been the focus of the conversations. I think that at the last meeting, they rolled out what they called some type of proposal, which kind of try to put triggers, benchmarks for staff to meet when things were submitted, how much time they should take to give those back. I think that's what they're trying to do. But I think so far the conversations have been good. So we've been participating. Staff has been participating in those meetings as well. And then on the 10th, I did attend the right after we left the mediation, I shot straight to the All Mayors Tribal Chairman Luncheon. It was well attended. There was a lot of people there. Everybody kind of gave an update on what they're doing in the city, development, business projects, and everybody kind of pointed to we're going to have the state of the city, so come get the details there. So it was fun. I think it was, people seemed to be happy to be back and say hi to each other, and it seemed like everybody was kind of good spirited up there talking about, what's the new thing in Indio or La Quinta or Indian Wells. I mentioned this yesterday at the meeting with Indian Wells, but they said that Dana, he got a script from Jay Leno or something. He was saying, but anyways, he had a good show up there, and I thanked him for that yesterday. But that was good. And then let's see here. And on the 9th, I did attend in person the Coachella Valley Energy Commission meeting. It was about 2 hours. I think the first hour was mainly comments from a lot of North Shore residents that came to kind of testify on their experience with the whole outage. It was very, very raw, very real. To be able to hear, kind of what they went through. And, you had a lady say that, she and her kids had to sleep in the car. And I mean, it wasn't a good story. But right after that, I think IID also spent some time talking about how they responded to the emergency, which was very intensive. I think, in fact, after seeing their response, the way they presented it, it's very obvious that they did a lot to try to restore power as soon as possible. They mobilized a tremendous amount of people. They were getting crews from Nevada. I think they were getting crews from across the state of California to come help with the response they had. I mean, they had a bunch of crews from a bunch of other agencies, working 24/7. There was just a lot of damage. I didn't realize the damage that was caused, but it sounds like 150 poles came down or something like that. Just a lot. But so there was, I mean, it was mainly that, it was testimony about the outage. IID's kind of saying this is what we did, and then they try to focus on what they call the SWOT analysis. I don't know that there was started. Yeah, it just kind of started, but it didn't really get too deep into it. But again, I think the commission is trying to really figure out what their role is and what they really want to focus on. So I think they're still in that stage. I did have a conversation with Director Hamby at the All Mayors Luncheon on Friday, and we talked about the meeting, and I kind of shared my thoughts with him, but it also sounds that from his perspective, the commission is still kind of breaking the ice. They're still trying to figure out maybe what they want to focus on, and it thinks that they're making progress. So that's the conversation that we had that day, and that's all I have.
They're looking to seat 3 additional commissioners, right?
They are, I think, but see, I got confused because I think I had heard 3 commissioners being assigned from the 3 different cities. But then right after I heard that, they threw out, well, we need more from the unincorporated areas, and then we need more from the tribal representation, from the tribal side. So I don't know if I think with the additional 3, it's going to 12, right?
I guess, yeah, whatever the number is,
Or 9.
and I suspect that, yeah, they're looking for that type of distribution of folks, but I don't know if the application is still available, but
It said it was online.
it is online. I didn't click on it, but I had to find out exactly. But yeah, I guess anybody can apply, but then it's up to the seated commissioners to decide who those 3 people are going to be.
And the comment was that it didn't need to be ratified by the IID board. I think that was something that was asked like 3 times. Are you sure? Are you sure? And the answer was, no, that's not what we.
Yeah, not according to the bylaws.
So interesting to see what happens.
Anyone else before we approve per diem? I'll second that. Roll call, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a note, we're going to do our legislative update after we reconvene, just in the interest of time for the closed session. So General Manager report.
Yes, sir. Just quickly to kind of close the loop on the IID Energy Commission seats, they're all at large. There's one that will represent the cities, Coachella Indio, La Quinta, Indian Wells, Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage, one that will represent the counties, the unincorporated parts of both Imperial and Riverside County, and then the tribal nations. So all three at large, you have to declare which one you're applying for on the form that's available on the IID website. The only other thing I have is just an update of where we are with COVID. We've got 3 folks off work right now, 1 positive case, 2 direct contacts. We've had 108 recovered positive cases so far. We've had 1 positive case so far in September. Through our self-attestation, we have 70% fully vaccinated, 30% not vaccinated or declined to state. Starting next week, September 20th, as part of our preparedness plan, we'll be offering COVID informational sessions to employees related to COVID-19 and vaccinations. These are going to be mandatory for everybody, whether they're vaccinated or not vaccinated. Masks will be required to be worn during the session. But we've had them put together by our medical professionals, specifically Greg Woods, who's a nurse practitioner, who is available and has been available for the last 2 or 3 years. He replaced Dr. Underwood, Bruce Underwood, to kind of give employees an alternative source to seek out should they have any questions about health or nourishment or what's going on. He's a very personable individual, very well connected, former public health employee at the federal level. So that's all I've got, sir.
Thank you. Council comments.
AB 361 has been passed and sent to the governor for his consideration to sign. AB 361 will establish Brown Act waivers moving forward. This would be an urgency clause, meaning that the bill would go into effect upon execution or signing by the governor. As you know, the portions of the executive order that deal with Brown Act waivers, as I call them, is set to expire September 30th. And the governor has until October 10th to sign this particular bill. AB 361 would only remain in effect until January 1, 2024. The bottom line is that if this bill is signed, local agencies can continue to use virtual means for their meetings, and public locations will remain optional. But that's only during the current COVID state of emergency. The bill also talks about using virtual means for future states of emergency that are declared at the state level. There are a number of other portions of the bill that deal with the mechanics, but the bottom line is that if AB 361 is signed, the current COVID state of emergency options for virtual meetings and optional public locations will remain in effect during the current COVID state of emergency. That's all I have today.
Thank you. And I don't believe we have a departmental report besides the ledge, which we'll do after. So at this time, the board will recess into closed session to discuss items and take action, I believe, on items 12A through C. And we will reconvene and report out on closed session as well as handling those other 2 items.
And I would just like to remind Director Aguilar and Director Bianco that the closed session information was sent to you separately via appointment, and again, just a couple of minutes ago.
All right, so the regular meeting is hereby reconvened. We do have no reportable action from closed section, but we do have an open session item 9C. Go ahead, Carrie.
Okay, so we're recommending that the board authorize the general manager to execute a funding agreement for Phase 1 of the Mid-Canal Storage Project that outlines the cost-sharing responsibilities between Coachella Valley Water District, San Diego County Water Authority, and San Luis River Indian Water Authority. Phase 1 is just to complete plan specs and environmental documentation to prepare the project for construction. Phase 2 will have a separate funding agreement and a separate request for authorization. It's also recommended the Board of Directors authorize the GM to enter into a seepage analysis funding agreement with the USBR, including a $33,000 deposit payable to the USBR. In addition, it's recommended that the GM be authorized to enter into a task order with Dahl Consultants in the amount of $466,344 to prepare the plan specs and environmental documentation for Phase 1 of this project. So the total cost of this request is $533,000, and CVWD's portion of the cost is $163,000. The other share of the cost will be split between San Diego County and the San Luis Rey Indian Water Authority. And the split is 61% for San Diego, the Indian Water Authority is 13%, and CVWD is 26%.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Gary. I would move approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Passed 3-0 with 2 absent.
Thank you.
And
Is there anything urgent nothing urgent from legislation? So
we'll hear the legislative report next meeting, and we'll see you then because we are adjourned. We have